Change is constant. It's everywhere and it just won't quit. And no one is immune. So accepting that, how best do you position your change initiatives to quickly get employees engaged and on board to making that change a success? Well, I have a few tactics for you. Tactics that I've gleaned from working with Fortune 500 executives all over the world leading through complex change and transformation. Tactics I'm about to share with you right now. Change can be difficult, daunting, stressful, and because of that, your employees might experience resistance, trying to hold out or push back on making change happen, hoping, perhaps with fingers crossed, that the change will just go away and they'll never have to engage. This can make your job to enroll the organization or your teams or your employees very, very challenging. Well, in this video, you're gonna learn 4 tactics that's gonna help you get that team more engaged and more on board with your next change initiative. Tactics that just might save you both time and money. So before I dive into the 4 tactics, let me first topline when it's most appropriate to employ these tactics. It makes the most sense to use these when you're embarking upon a meaningful change initiative or program. A program that requires the engagement, the action, the motivation of your employees in order to be successful. So that could look like a change where employees are having to work differently, where employees are having to work in different locations, where employees are having to work with different tools, perhaps on a different software platform, using different technology, or even work in different teams or with different reporting relationships. So that could be an organizational restructure, a team restructure, where reporting relationships or reporting lines are changed or disrupted. It's these types of changes where employee engagement is a necessity for success that these tactics will best serve you. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into tactic number 1. The first tactic is to communicate clearly and transparently. Share with your team or the organization why this change and why now. Clearly state the rationale, the reasoning behind the change, why it's important, and what it will mean for the organization and the business moving forward. And strive not to sugarcoat things to try to quell the emotional response of the employees. You know, as much as we like to, as a leader or a team leader or an executive, maybe try to protect our employees or our teams from a lot of stress, try to nurture them and you know, as they move through the change initiative, it's actually giving them a disservice. Because the more upfront that you can be about the complexity of the change, acknowledging that there will be challenge, that there are risks, the quicker that they can fully understand the full scope of the project, digest it, process it, and then get about the business of actually making it happen. When we strive to sugarcoat things or hold back information or make things seem like they're going to be a lot more simple than they actually are going to be, it creates our employees to be ill-prepared in embarking on the journey. So when a challenge hits, when those difficult emotions are inspired, when the stress comes, the frustration hits, the thought is, well, this thing wasn't supposed to be complex, it's supposed to be more simple. And so that resistance, that checking out, that disengagement is going to be more prevalent within the organization. So don't sugarcoat, be very clear, transparent on why the change, why now, and maybe even the magnitude of the challenge and the complexity that employees should expect as they move through the process. The second tactic is to embrace the organization as a critical part of the journey, then listen and respond. If the intent is to get your employees, your workforce, or your team on board with a change, then you need to treat them as if they're on board. They're on the same level, the same boat, the same ship, whatever kind of analogy you want to reference, but they're walking with you hand in hand, and treat them as such. So once you've communicated the vision, the why behind the change, what's required, and the complexity, then listen to how the organization feels about that particular change, perhaps where they might foresee some challenges, some gaps, some risks, how they might see a way to optimize moving through the execution of that change. When I work with workforces all over the world striving to go through really complex change, really complex transformation, and when the emotional landscape of the organization is really tumultuous, one of the most powerful things that cultures, employees, leaders can do is to create listening sessions. Whether that be something that's set aside, something that's more formal, where a handful of employees are invited to join a call with a couple senior leaders just to express how they're doing with the change, or if it's a lot more simple, simply just one-on-ones with managers and those that they manage, you need to create those avenues for employees to feedback how they're managing that change. How things are going, what's working, what's not working. When employees know that their voices are heard, that they're understood, that's gonna boost such a high level of engagement throughout the organization. So ensure you're creating those avenues, treating those employees as exactly what they are, a critical necessity in the success of that change. Listen to them, and then once you hear what's working and what's not, respond. Maybe make changes within the execution of the plan, taking into account what you just heard from your employees or from your workforce. Yo, you getting value from this? You like thinking about resistance and resilience and emotions? Then this is the channel for you. Make sure that you subscribe, like, notification, buttons, things to click. I drop videos like this all the time, making sure that you have high value content at your fingertips. So make sure you subscribe so you're one of the first to get notified when a new video drops. All right, let's get back into it. The third tactic is to co-create the opportunity for growth within your employees. I think too often when we're leading through really complex change, we focus on the metrics, the deliverables, what's required to make that change happen, making sure that our employees are staying in order and actually doing those deliverables. But seldom do we think about how do we use this change as a way for our employees to grow on a personal level. So perhaps ahead of the change, before you get into the grind of it all, think about, the scope of what's about to happen, and then work with each one of your employees to understand, okay, based on where you want to go in your career, based on kind of where you want to stretch, where you want to go next, how do you think we can use this change to help you get there? How can you maybe develop new skills that you've been wanting to grow in as a part of the scope with this change? Challenge that employee to give that thought. What are some specific actions they can be taking? And then work to co-create how the work plan might be massaged so that they can actually have development areas that are in tune with the change, developing themselves while also executing the change with success. Change presents such massive opportunity, not only for our businesses to grow and remain relevant, but also for the individuals working to make that change happen. Because there's always discomfort. There's always what I call those signal emotions, the frustration, the fear, that stress that happens, and that always welcomes us into our moment of opportunity. I'm going to work with new individuals. I'm going to create new connections. I'm going to get to learn a new software. I'm going to get developed in this way. This can actually put me on the next step to get to where I want to go next in my career. So keep your mind wide open to what that might be. Invite your employees to think about it for themselves and then co-create those opportunities for your employee to have that personal development. That will boost your engagement like you wouldn't believe. Because not only are they leaning in because they know it's important for the business, but they're actually getting growth too. They're leaning in because they're growing as an individual, as a contributor, as a leader. The fourth tactic is to appreciate, celebrate, and repeat. Now, this might sound woo-woo to you. It might sound like something that doesn't need to be stated because of course you're going to say thank you every now and again. But you cannot underestimate the power of showing appreciation to your workforce for actually committing to the actions required, making the effort that's needed to make a change successful. It typically takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of mental energy, and there's also stress and those difficult emotions as those employees are dealing with. So the more that you can acknowledge that effort, Shower those individuals with appreciation, the higher that engagement will go. And that's not just me talking, standing here looking into this lens as things fall out of my brain. That's actually based on our research, on our data that we've conducted all around the world, studying resistance, studying effective strategies to engage employees through change initiatives. Consistently, one of the top most effective strategies is appreciation. Showing individuals you appreciate the effort that they're making and all of the work that they're doing to make the change successful. Now, not only do you want to appreciate individuals, but also find moments to celebrate small wins and big wins. Celebrate when individuals achieve certain deliverables within the execution of the change. It's always nice when you're in the grind, you're trying to get changes done, you're working, and it feels like there's not enough hours in the day to get all the work done, and then there's a celebratory lunch. There's a time where you take your team to say, you know what, let's stop for today. Let's reflect on everything that we've achieved, recently over these past several weeks, and give that time to celebrate. Appreciate, celebrate, and then repeat. So have yourself, a regular regimen, some type of structure, and I like to actually show appreciation daily, and I actually put a reminder in my calendar. So maybe that's a strategy you want to employ, making sure that you're sharing appreciation to those individuals around you, as well as celebrating their actions, their deliverables, and their achievements, the small ones and the big ones. So if you got value from that, if you dug it, I got something else for you, and it's for free. I actually want to gift you a snippet of a keynote recording. This is a keynote that I delivered to an organization going through tremendous change, both internally as well as dealing with a lot of market disruption. And it's the portion of the keynote where I'm talking about those skills that are so important when you're leading, inspiring others through change. And it's all based on the research that I mentioned earlier in the video. And this keynote recording is yours today for free. Just click on the link below within the notes section of this video. I want to make sure that you have the insights, the data, and the research to ensure yours and your team's growth through even your most challenging changes. I'm Cassandra Worthy, and until we meet again, keep growing and keep rocking.